Where the stars and you.
Oh, hello. My name is Salman Hamid, and I'm Assistant Professor of Integrated Science and Humanities at Hampshire College.
I'm Kevin Anderson. I teach courses in film and anthropology at the University of Massachusetts, and this is Film Autopsy. Hello, and welcome to a film autopsy of The Descendants, new film by Alexander Payne, made famous from his other films, Sideways, About Schmidt, Election. This one takes place on the island of Oahu, and then we bounce around to the Big Island and to Kauai for a little bit. Stars George Clooney as a lawyer, a Hawaiian lawyer, who's at the very beginning of the film, his wife experiences a rather traumatic accident while boating and is put into a coma. So he's required to take care of her. And while he's taking care of her, and you probably know this already from the trailer, he discovers from his rather angst-ridden teenage daughter that she had been cheating on him. So it creates this interesting conflict where he's required and he wants to take care of her, but then in the middle of his caregiving for her while she's in the coma, he discovers that she had been cheating on him. So it then puts him at somewhat of a moral crossroads.
Yeah, this is a really complex picture. It's a very simple picture in many ways that, well, it just is about a family drama. George Clooney with his two daughters, there's a younger daughter, but it really brings forward family dynamics. And this is one of those cases where George Clooney, being the father over there, he hasn't really known his daughters as much, and he didn't even know what was going on in their lives. And so here is a teenager that now comes in and is staying with him, sort of like when her mother is in the coma, and he is discovering not just about his wife, but also about his daughter, the teenage daughter.
So we do get a sense at that point in the film that you know, his wife probably was looking for some romance, looking for a relationship, because he was such an absent husband and absent father. So it's an interesting journey he goes on, piecing together the kind of complex elements of his family and his daughters and his relationship with his wife. And
he's not a bad guy in the sense that, I mean, he may have been absent, and that's one of those things that you don't necessarily are told directly, but instead those things are sort of like seep in through the screenplay, and I think that is done very well with small dialogues and also with strong supporting cast. I think the person who plays George Clooney's daughter, the teenage daughter, I mean, she's fantastic. Yeah. She also brings in her friend, another teenager, Sid, who likes to just hang out with them, and I think that really adds a fantastic element to the film. And as it turns out, Sid himself, on the one hand, he would seem like a stoner kid, but actually it turns out to be having a depth to it, and it adds a little bit more, and he actually plays a crucial role within that film. But I think it's the way to describe that film would be small stories, small elements, and small gestures. George Clooney, I think people often underestimate because he looks the same overall, but he's a fantastic actor.
It's a great performance in this film.
And here he just makes a little bit of gestures, like, and that's enough to reveal who he is, and I think that was really subtle.
Yeah, and I think Alexander Payne strikes this great balance between comedy and melodrama in the film. There's scenes, particularly, well, there's many scenes, but particularly one in the hospital room where another woman comes in and speaks to George Clooney's wife, who's still unconscious in the coma, and that scene is so full of forgiveness and anger and pain, and it's done fantastically well. And that's just one of several scenes in the film that, again, strike this really great balance between comedy and melodrama. And I think overall, I mean, he reminds me a lot, or this film reminds me of Woody Allen in a lot of ways. I think we can almost think of Alexander Payne as being kind of the Woody Allen of Nebraska.
I don't know. I don't buy that, because I think it would be well, less neurotic Woody Allen, and I think less neurotic.
From Nebraska, not Manhattan.
And less neurotic Woody Allen is not Woody Allen. so I think it's that kind of obsessiveness is not there. I mean I think he gets little details right, but not necessarily the absurdity of life.
Well, it's the attention to good story, good character. There's not a lot of cinematic razzle-dazzle in this. And speaking of that, even though it's shot in Hawaii, Alexander Payne gives us a version of Hawaii that we really don't see in other films. It's very common. It's everyday people. There's nice beaches. There's shots of Diamond Head, but it's not this gratuitous, you know, sappy shots of waterfalls and luau's and stuff like that. It's a very realistic, I think, representation of life in Hawaii.
And I thought it was interesting that it did talk about a little bit about the history of Hawaii and how some people got to inherit this type of a land. I mean, I'm interested in these issues from Hawaiian rights issues and things like that. So that was interesting that it just, I mean, again, it's not a message film in that sense, but it just alludes to it. Well, how did some people get to have this land? And overall, so it was a very, and I should mention, because it looks like it is about a person in a coma and all these things, that it would be a really heavy film. Actually, it's not. It's a very enjoyable film, and it's performances are fantastic. But I should mention one thing that bugged me a little. There is
what could bug you with this film?
And that was its music. Okay, it has a nice Hawaiian music, and I like Hawaiian music in general.
It's ukulele and vocals.
I would say
lovely.
It was relentless. Okay, and the way it is like, I mean, it was constant throughout the film, and so sometimes there would be vocals and sometimes they won't, but there was no break from it. And I thought I was stuck in an elevator sometimes, like, you know, with this music.
I think you're just too sensitive to ukulele music. I mean, it's fitting, it's culturally appropriate, it works well as transitions between scenes.
It was wearing me down.
You are the first person to be worn down by ukulele music, I'm sure.
But other than this small thing, I really liked Robert Forster, who played
George Clooney's wife's father.
He was very good. Again, small role, but very firm. And stern.
Laird Hamilton.
Which one was
the big wave surfer? He plays, you know, the guy who'd been driving the boat when they have the accident. George Clooney's wife.
That's right. Yeah. So again, but all of the small, I think all of the small roles were very well fit in, and I hope George Clooney will get a nomination for this one.
I think Alexander Payne nominated for director, the film for best picture, Clooney definitely for best actor, and maybe even Shailene Woodley, who plays the daughter from Secret Life of an American Teenager. So I think both of us are saying, check out The Descendants.
Go see the film and buy the soundtrack.
Yes, I'm buying the soundtrack.
The soundtrack is great, but don't put it all the way through. Have some
you
breaks.
Over for dinner and play just
have some breaks when the music is not on.